about that. And the question always comes up is what happens when you are a rising Indian American immigrant community, and then you begin to understand that there is a possibility that there is a little bit of resentment. And that resentment comes from multiple areas, the press, academia, and all of that. I'm going to just read you a couple of stats, which I think is going to lead into our next speaker and why is this an issue that we have to deal with. You know, we're 5.1 million strong, if you take the global number which I mentioned about that. If you understand that 16 of Fortune 500 companies are CEOs of Indian origin, Hindu American. I asked two of them, one is an atheist. But beyond that, if you exclude that, 15 are Hindu Americans. Profound number. 270,000 students come to the United States each year. They spend $10 billion. They create over 93,000 jobs. 72 of the 648 startups these days of unicorn value are from Indian American founders. 60% of all the hotels in this country are owned by Patels, Shahs, Punjabis, and now everybody wants to buy a motel. It is a good investment. But 60% of hotels, it's $700 billion. Can you imagine why we are being looked at? Why there is a concerted effort to often bring us to a point of vulnerability. Patents, 10% of United States patents were filed by Indian Americans. 22,000 faculty members, deans of universities in management and engineering programs are Indian American, 80% are Hindu American, so it's safe to say, but there's a tremendous amount of that. But here's the point about the next speaker, and I want to talk about a little bit of these stats. You know, people hear about Sundar Iyer, and often enough, there's two things that people often relate him to. CISCO, and then they relate him to SB 403. Let me tell you, yes, Sundar is a very fierce, focused individual. He had 3 startups. In the last startup, he gave his equity to his workers, who then happened to pull a fast one. And then we all know what happened with CISCO, but win after win, the wheels of justice may be slow. Justice delayed sometimes is awkward. But because of the fact that some people never give up and continue to fight this issue, I don't know, Sundar, probably over the last 6 months to a year, free conversation at a coffee shop where we walked in trying to convince each other that our positions were totally different, diametrically opposite. But Sundar personifies what it takes to understand that the forces of evil sometimes requires a concerted effort. It requires you to understand politics. And somebody builds startups, sometimes you don't think about politics, and many of you may or may never have thought about it, but you should. Because then he found that politics is stacked against us as minorities because of one reason: the lack of political engagement at a critical scale. Dr. Jabra, Jeevan, I, many others in this room have done this, but it was lonely out there. We paid the price for that. But I will tell you, this individual, Sundar Iyer, has personified what it means to ensure that there's a sense of accountability, even if it's from our own Indian American elected officials. And I often have this conversation with some of the members of the Samosa caucus in the assembly. You gotta stand for something. It's okay if you sometimes have to do something and you have to insulate yourself. At the end of the day, always remember, when you fall, the only people who are going to lift you up are your own. Remember about that. The best damn lesson I got from Assemblymember John Dutra is, Yogi, your base is your Indian American community, hold on to them. But having said that, Sundar has become a student of politics. He probably understands politics better than 90% of people. Truthful, he sends emails, he gets to people. If he doesn't know somebody, he'll send 2 emails, and by the 3rd email, he'll build a connection. He'll send them information, and by the time people read it, they come back and say, you got screwed. But what are they going to do about it? That's what Hindu Action is doing, holding people accountable. That's what A4H is doing, holding people accountable. Many other organizations. But Sundar, you've inspired us. You put your money where your mouth is. You've traveled. You've been in places. You've talked to people. You've had meetings on short notice. Zoom calls. Just anybody would listen to us, right? Friend, an absolutely good human being. If the vernacular of caste is going to get a new definition in America, I guarantee you, when the book is written, Sundar Iyer's name is going to be etched as one of our principal players. Our friend, our community advocate, Sundar Iyer.
First of all, thank you all for being here, and thanks, Yugi, for that. Well, that was a bit more than I expected, but I appreciate that. Also, appreciate you calling me here, and also good to meet a number of stalwarts of the community. In the last 1+ year, I've got to say, while there's been lots of upheaval and pain, it's been wonderful meeting great people at different walks of life. Whether it be um, even with Dr. Jafraji, Sri Iyer, so many others that I've met in this journey. But just I'll jump into giving a little bit of information, though I've repeated this many times, so I'll keep that very short and give you new pieces of information and data. But first, I just want to start with the fact that I was called to also talk about Hinduphobia. I lied. I'm not here to talk about Hinduphobia. I'm here to talk about state-sponsored Hinduphobia. So, quick background, most of you probably know this, but I'll summarize. I've been in the Bay Area for almost 25+ years. I came here in '98 and did 4 tech startups, mostly in the networking, security, and related areas. Sometime in 2015, in my 4th startup, which was funded by CISCO, I hired a gentleman. I don't know if that word is appropriate, but we'll call him a gentleman, called John Doe. Now, I have nothing to say about John Doe. It's really irrelevant to me. But John Doe happened to be a classmate of mine who later on worked with the California Civil Rights Department, which is a state agency, to file a caste discrimination case that all of you probably know as the CISCO case. Very quick, I'll spend 1 minute to summarize some of the key aspects of the case. But when the Civil Rights Department tried to sue us and CISCO, they basically essentially said we didn't promote this guy, blah, 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 because he is a Dalit. We pointed out a number of inaccuracies in the case, including the fact that the position that he claims discrimination for was given to another senior candidate who also happened to be Dalit. That senior candidate is a fantastic, hardworking, brilliant gentleman that I've co-founded companies with in the past. And the state couldn't care less. In fact, we told the state that every top leadership position in my group has gone to that other senior Dalit candidate. Not only couldn't they care less, they hid all of that, went to the press, went to the court, did all the brouhaha, which, as you know, in the last 1 year also became part of the SB 403 movement and all of that nonsense. There are many more inaccuracies in the case, which you can, there's a website called castgate.org. I encourage you to look up actual code facts. There's no mainstream media that would ever report that, but feel free to have a look. Now, what is vexing here is not the details of the case, but the way the state agency essentially said, you are Hindu, and hence you are caste. Not only you, but you and many other colleagues in my group are upper caste Hindu, and hence you are caste. The state also made several statements on Hinduism, which are downright acerbic and insane for state agency to make. These include choice words like surveys put in from Equality Labs that has this fantastic thing that wherever Hindus migrate to, caste will be a world problem. This is the state agency saying this. If an individual said this, they have the right to the First Amendment. They can say whatever they want. We see enough haters on the planet every day. But this is your taxpayer-funded state agency saying this. They made about more than 20 comments on Hinduism, which the state is not allowed to by the First Amendment, by the constitutional amendments. They essentially made a whole word salad of adjectives on Indian and Hindu Americans. So what I'm going to do is, to make this a bit interactive, I'm going to not speak this, but actually give you a quiz. So I shall now be a proctor. And you will have to answer, who has called Indian Americans and upper caste Hindus as dominant, hostile, oppressive, violent, privileged, inherently violent to the Dalits. I'm sorry, this pause doesn't mean I'm done. It means I'm taking a breath to continue. Dominant, hostile, oppressive, privileged, cable, tribal, bigoted, inherently violent to the Dalits. These are not the words of the far, far left, though they very well are. These are the words of the California Civil Rights Department. If you answer that, you've aced this quiz. These are the words of a taxpayer-funded, these are the words of your taxpayer-funded California Civil Rights Department. An agency that till today, over the past 4 years, doesn't give a flying shit. That was meant to be an alliteration, but I should say flying shit. That is the state of what the government agency has gotten to today. Now, this is all history and past. We countersued the CRD, that case is still on. We filed a motion to sanction the CRD. They were supposed to drop the case on me and another manager. They're still suing CISCO, and they were just sanctioned by the court 2 months back. Now, what I want to focus on, though, is a much broader thing. So, this is all history, but I'll take the time to give you one poignant piece of information. The state claims, working with the Great Equality Labs, that something of the order of 4 to 20,000 Dalit Americans have been physically assaulted, raped, or spat upon by upper caste Indian Americans in America. I'm not done. In America, simply because their caste was known. A fact that has no place in police records, obviously. Now, the state makes this claim 7 to 8 times in different court documents, and they're unrelenting. You slap them, they don't give a shit. They'll keep coming back because it's your and our money that they're spending with a sort of unfettered number of dollars. Now, where I want to go with this is a few epiphanies, if you will. In the last 1.5 years, while I've been working with a number of stalwarts in the community and appreciate a lot of advice I got while working in the background, we worked on fighting SB 403 and so on, is what I see today are some of the biggest issues that people have. First is fear. I want to talk about fear a bit. I've talked to legislatures in the Democratic Party. I don't mean to make this political, but the good ones in that party are afraid in California. I've talked to the governor's office, several emails. They treat the topic like a hot potato event. They know they have screwed up, but they don't want to get involved. The district attorney of California tries to punt this issue. The ethics person in the legislature, she punts my email 3 times. There's a new lady called Tamikia Moss. She is in charge of the CRD and a number of other departments. She doesn't want to reply to my email. Okay. I write to the DOJ. This is the Community Relationship Service of the DOJ. Their bloody charter is to prevent issues like this, bring communities together, stop hate, blah, blah, blah. There's a whole beautiful soliloquy of adjectives on their webpage of the great things they do. They don't want to get involved on essentially the most hateful, bigoted act of an agency, of a government agency in probably the last 40 years in America. Now, I shall keep escalating my emails, and I shall put them all on public record, and I'm going to be making all of this public fairly soon. But independent of this, the discovery here is really not about caste or a particular agency or people. It is how bad and sordid the system is. And until and unless we step in and fight the good fight, we will be washed over like several great civilizations in the past. That is just 100% guaranteed. And so my point here was that each one of us, I'm going to go beyond being vigilant and blah blah and so on. I mean, we're done with all this crap. We've got to be actively involved and take up something that we control. What do I mean by that? The one act of control, of course, is find people you trust, give money to an organization, and hope they do great things. And it could be the HAFs, the KONAs, the Hindu Actions, whatever you believe makes sense. That's fine. That's donating money. But you've got to go beyond that. You've got to take control and say, what can I do? Can you write a letter to your congressman? And force the response. Go deep down. Do not stop at a no. Get to the bottom of it. Can you publish an article in the press? Make it happen. Can you get your school to talk about the nonsense that's happening in the state? Make it happen. Fight whatever you believe you can control. All of us are human. All of us have limited time. And I have my own journey. Last year, I started a foundation whose focus was actually to build AI systems to defend the truth. Because I think I can control that. I understand a bit of technology and I can do that. I don't know how successful I will be, but I shall fucking try.